Every now and again, I get involved in conversations with innovators that are complaining about working inside large organizations, the frustration, the bureaucracy, the politics, the having to build relationships. All of that stuff really gets in the way sometimes when you're trying to move fast with a project. And I often hear them complain that they wish that they worked in a startup. And it is true, there are benefits of working in a startup. I'll put my hand up. If you're working in a startup, you can move fast, you can iterate, you can change direction, you can definitely collaborate on a cross-functional level because there's not so many layers that you have to work through. And so working in a startup can be something that's pretty beneficial if you want to move fast with an innovation. But then when we have these conversations, especially when we hear commentators talk about how innovation always happens at the edge, we always tend to assume that when we talk about the edge, we're just talking about startups. But sometimes when you stop and think about it and consider it, there are also benefits of working inside a large organization. Hi, my name is Tendai, and welcome to this channel where I talk about innovation and transformation inside large organizations. I'm an organizational psychologist who's also spent a lot of time working on innovation programs with various large organizations. And on this channel, I talk about how innovators and people with breakthrough ideas can create buy-in for their ideas and buy-in for their projects so they can drive them to success. Let's get back to this conversation again. If you are working inside the large organization and what you're trying to do is to drive those projects to success, there are a few benefits that you can actually leverage, particularly if you can get buy-in and you can get leadership support and you can get your colleagues to work with you, you can really leverage a whole bunch of benefits that are inside large organizations. One of the first benefits that a large organization has is the fact that they are already successful. And that success comes with a couple of benefits. So for example, when you're a successful organization, a successful established company, you have a really cool brand. And having a really cool brand is something that you can leverage to drive towards success. In fact, when you're a successful organization, another thing you have is access to customers. And having access to customers is, again, something you can leverage and use. In fact, startups sometimes struggle with getting access to customers. They sometimes wish they had the same level of access to customers that large companies have. They have to build up their brand. They have to build up their access to customers before they can get to the same level as large organizations. So if you're an innovation team that's working inside a large company, having access to customers and a really strong brand is something you can leverage to try and drive your project forward. The second benefit of working inside large organizations is you have access to resources. And I'm going to break these resources down into like two parts. The first one is financial resources. I know that we hear a lot of breaking news stories about funding for startups in Silicon Valley and other ecosystems. But the truth is, the vast majority of startups are really struggling financially, right? They don't have a lot of resources. They're bootstrapping. That's the vast majority of startups out there in the world, which kind of gives you a chance to be really focused and disciplined if you're a startup. But if you're working in a large organization, if you can actually get access to the funding, large organizations tend to have quite good financial resources that they can use to actually, fund and support innovations. In fact, when I work with large organizations, I often have to remind them that they shouldn't keep funding ideas that are showing no traction, because sometimes inside large organizations, once a particular project ends up as a line item on the budget, it just gets funded every year without people checking what progress it's actually making towards finding a business model that works or even a value proposition that resonates with customers. And so that's something that, again, if you're an innovator inside a large company, you can leverage those resources, particularly if you're honest and you're really trying to create value for your organization. That's something that can be beneficial to you. So the second kind of resource you can have access to if you're working inside a large organization is access to the value chain that the organization uses to drive its business model. So you can have access to manufacturing, logistics, and maybe even some of the key partners that organization uses to drive its business model towards success. If you can partner with some of the folks that are working within that value chain that can help you with your innovation to maybe even launch a pilot program, for example. The other thing that large companies really have within the institution is a lot of talent. There's a war for talent out there, and in some ecosystems outside of Silicon Valley, startups sometimes really struggle to find the right talent to work on their innovations. But if you're inside a large company, you can have access to marketing talent, sales talent, legal and compliance talent. There's a lot of talent that you can have access to if you're working inside a large organization. And so this is something you can leverage. This is definitely something you can use to try and drive your innovation to success. So you can see that the kinds of things that people need to drive successful innovation don't just exist in startups. Startups have some benefits, mostly connected to speed. But large companies have benefits that are connected to scale. And eventually, every startup is trying to get to scale. So if you're an innovator inside a large company and you're trying to drive your idea to scale, then it is possible for you to leverage some of these resources, some of these benefits of working inside a large organization to drive your innovation towards success. But of course, there's a catch. There's always a catch. The only way that you can get access to these resources is if you have good relationships with colleagues inside the business. That is the challenge of doing innovation inside a large organization. If you don't have good relationships with your colleagues inside the organization, you cannot leverage the benefits of working inside a large company. So I can list them for you. I can say you have access to funding, you have access to talent, you have access to marketing, sales, you have access to customers. Like I can list all these things for you, but actually having access to them doesn't mean that you'll get to utilize them. And so the only way you get to utilize them is if you can build relationships with people that control access to those things so that you can then get access to those benefits. So as an innovator, you need to be good at two things. Like I always say, you need to be good at the entrepreneurship, the creativity, the creating value propositions and business models, but you also need to be very good at building relationships within your organization. A combination of both those things will help drive your innovation to success.